so far is Virginia Beach police responded out here to Kempsville High School for one man who was allegedly trespassing.
On a Friday afternoon in April, News 3 Virginia Beach neighborhood reporter John Hood got a tip from Virginia Beach police about some activity at Kempsville High School and an arrest on school grounds. But that was just the tip of the iceberg of the story of Joseph Molineaux, a gym teacher who worked in Virginia Beach City Public Schools for more than 2 decades, who has been in jail since late April, facing charges for alleged trespassing, possession of child pornography, threats to civilian population, and possession of weapons on school property. I'm Maddie Miller, and welcome to another episode of True Crime 757, where we talk about the stories we put on air, but we just dig a little deeper. Now, Margot, can you tell us what happened the day Molineaux was arrested on April 25th?
Yeah, April 25th. This is a very crazy case. So he is arrested. We know that he has worked at the school district from 1999 until 2023. So he is at the school district and he is arrested on school grounds. Now, according to police, they say they found multiple bladed weapons inside of his car. And police also shared with us like a text message that he allegedly sent where he said, and I don't want to mess this up because I want to read it exactly. They said that he texts this to his mother referencing his dog saying, "She grounds me and keeps me from going into Walmart or into Kempsville High School with an AK-47 and mowing down administration." So he's talking about his dog, providing him, I would assume, comfort. And that's the message he sent to his mother. After he was arrested, police say they searched his home and found loaded AK-style rifles inside the house.
Wow. Okay, so he sends that message to his mom, including the AK language in there. And then the next day he's arrested on school grounds. He's not in the building, right? He's just on school grounds, like outside.
And the weapons were in the car. Yeah.
I see, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And this is on a Friday afternoon, and kids were kind of aware that something had happened, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the kids, there was something weird on campus, and John, I was out there. He was talking to people and trying to figure out what exactly was going down on Kempsville at Kempsville High School. Yeah.
Let's play that bite real quick of those students talking to John Hood about that.
Okay.
And how long might that have been, do you know?
It was like
1 or 2 minutes.
And so Joseph Molino, he retired after over 2 decades of time in the school system. Why would he have an issue with Kempsville administrators? He kind of alluded to that in that text he sent his mom.
Yeah, that's the text that police are saying he sent, and so we don't know exactly what his issue is with the administration or why say something like that. I mean, I guess he's the one in his mind only knows, why he did that. But what we do know is that he had been in trouble and reprimanded many times during his time as a teacher. He's worked at several different schools, and he has an extensive history of getting into trouble in his various positions that he was holding for the district. So when he got arrested, I was like, well, that name, his last name, it really registered. I'm like, how do I know that name? And I went back. We had done stories. I've been doing it for years. Every few months, we'll request information from the Department of Education about teachers that have lost their license or teachers that have gotten in trouble. Bad teachers is what, we talk about. And so a lot of times a teacher will get in trouble or they do something inappropriate, but it doesn't rise to the level of criminal behavior. But it's inappropriate enough for them to lose their license. I've seen so many cases like this. This happens, all the time. So it clicked in my mind. I said, oh, he's one of the teachers that I have FOIA'd. I had filed a Freedom of Information request because I saw the list of who's lost their license. And then I go back and request the information of, why they lost their license. So in that information that we had requested, there was all kinds of stuff that we saw that led to him getting in trouble. So the final straw was an incident that happened at the Kempsville Rec Center in November of 2022. And so there was an encounter with a student who was a freshman at the time, and I interviewed this student who was 17 at the time of our interview, who outlined what he says happened during this situation. And it's exactly with what it states in the documentation that we obtained from the Department of Education. Basically, the kid's going into the rec center. He's with some friends, and Molineaux is going there as well and starts talking to him, and then requests for the kid to take a picture of him while they're entering the rec center, like right at the front entrance.
For scholastic profile, and I was like already weirded out by that. I was like, why? Last photo he took was a photo of his genitals.
The kid's like, okay. He's like, I thought this was really weird, and Molineaux, he said, was talking to him about being a student and, just saying stuff to him. So the student says he hands him his phone to take a photo and of the teacher. Mm-hmm. And in the corner, like, where your camera roll is on the little corner edge, you can see like the last picture that was taken. Yeah. And the kid said that there was a picture of Molineaux in the nude, completely naked, but also wearing a leather jacket in this photo. And the kid was like creeped out, and was like, whoa, this is weird. And he actually says that Molineaux was wearing the same leather jacket when he was talking to him. So he was just like, oh my God, this is like so creepy. But he did it, and he took the photo and he went on. And then so it was a few months actually when he was talking to other kids and they were joking about it in the classroom, and the teacher overheard, and then the teacher got involved and made some kind of report. And then that's when all of this with this student kind of unfolded. So that's what led to him losing his license. That was like the final straw. Like you could see the genitals on the phone. He said that it was like an accident. He didn't mean to do it, but it was weird. And, that's what led to his arrest. But there was just so much more. We then requested all of the different things that he had been in trouble for, not just this. At first, we just got this one incident, and then we requested all the other things. And I know you've read through some of those documentation. Mm-hmm. There was stuff in there. And for this situation, he was allowed, it stated, to retire in lieu of dismissal. So that was like what happens frequently with these cases. They don't make them, so you can still get your retirement. When he got arrested, it said on his bond worksheet in his arrest records that he takes home about $2,700 a month in retirement from the Virginia pension system. So he's, getting paid his pension despite getting in trouble for that, and then some of these other situations that happened.
So if he had just been outright fired, perhaps that would have not allowed him to get this pension that.
Well, and the rules are, it's not so black and white. It's very complex. And so, and it's also, so in part of our investigation, I've been trying to get information about what other teachers are getting retirement, how much are they getting, but it's all very much protected by personnel information. So the people that I spoke to that run the Virginia retirement system are like, even if you FOIA this information, we can't give it to you. It's protected. So it's, there's all kinds of teachers that have faced this. I mean, and this is, when we do these investigations about bad teachers, this is an extremely small number of teachers that get in trouble for stuff like this compared to the overall teachers in the system. Most teachers are such wonderful people devoting their lives to helping people. I do not want to make it seem like this is something that happens all the time. But when they do get in trouble, it takes a lot for their retirement to be taken away, their money to be taken away is what, for some of these situations.
And so as of right now, in August, these are still just charges. We cannot assume guilt on these charges. But from some of the files you got from the Department of Education, there are some documented incidents of Molino with both students and staff outlining some pretty concerning behavior. Could you touch on that?
Yeah, throughout the duration of his career with the Virginia Beach school system, he had repeatedly gotten into trouble and got reprimanded. And it says in many of these things, if you do this again, you're going to be terminated. If you do, you read it several times. So in one of these situations, this involves students. There were students that had complained that he was like yelling to them while they were walking, and he was in a car at one point. They talked about there was a letter of reprimand for his record showing that he had talked to students about their personal relationships, their romantic relationships, like asking questions and insinuating different relationships. And the students that had reported this told the administrators that they felt really uncomfortable by the conversation. So that was one time that he got, written up, quote unquote, for this inappropriate behavior. Mm-hmm. And the school policies outline how you're supposed to act, what you're supposed to say, what is appropriate, texting, social media, like they cover all these things. And that's part of when you sign up to be a teacher, understanding what's permitted and what's not permitted. In another incident, he got written up for having, because of text messages that he was allegedly sending between him and a substitute teacher. The substitute teacher was going out on leave for some kind of medical issue that she was dealing with. And he was asking her in the text, according to the documents from the Department of Education, he said, "Are you having a sex change operation?" which she thought was inappropriate. And then at one point in the exchange, he allegedly wrote, "If your surgery involves adding something down there, I support that. Does that mean I can call you a different alphabet letter name?" And she, in her response that they have in the documents, put up a boundary saying, I don't like this, or, this is uncomfortable. She obviously reported it. He got in trouble for that situation and was told, "Don't do this again. It's inappropriate. If you do it again, you could be terminated, blah, 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 blah." And then in the other more egregious allegation of his behavior as a teacher was, this happened several years ago. He worked as like a coach at a certain point. At this time, he was working as an assistant coach at Lansdowne High School. And there was an article in the paper that was kind of critical of whatever was going on with the football team. And he called up the pilot, the Virginian pilot, and left this like threatening message for the reporter, saying, threatening the reporter, use like curse words and stuff. And that was all in the documentation that we obtained, the outlining what the message said. And he at that point got in trouble for it again. So there was some other things in his record. There was also an incident in the locker room where he said something when people were getting dressed, and the kids complained, and he got in trouble again about that. So there's just been a lot of times that he has been told to stop with whatever he was saying or doing.
So these documents you got them from the Department of Education, but it's documentation from Virginia Beach public school leaders, like in real time, like when the incidents are happening, like an incident report of each of these, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you said a recurring theme, like more towards the end, probably, they were saying, "This cannot happen again. You are being warned.
Mm-hmm.
I'm disturbed by your behavior."
Yeah, and the language was just what you said. "I'm disturbed by what you are doing. You need to stop." He was told repeatedly in these letters to knock it off, don't do it. And then it just seems like he kept getting in trouble over and over and over. And it wasn't until the picture on the phone in the leather jacket that was like, okay, this is, they've had enough at that point.
Mm-hmm.
That's when the final straw came.
And the school leaders know that they've seen our reports of this, your reports of this. Have they said anything in response to all of his recent charges?
Yeah, it was very difficult to get a response from the school district. They weren't responding, citing personnel records and things like that. They did eventually send us some information about him and about the importance of, safety with the students and things like that. But I do think that the way the laws are written in Virginia, personnel records are not easily accessible, and they're protected. I used to work down in Florida, right? A teacher got in trouble, we could just come up and look at their whole file. If a teacher got arrested, you can come up and look at their school file. Like I did it several times where you could see, they got in trouble for this, this, and this. And that's not the case here in Virginia. You can't just send information out. Now, also, I'm not speaking about Virginia Beach school districts, but many school districts across the nation don't want their teacher. They don't want that kind of publicity. They don't want, to make it look bad. I'm not saying that about Virginia Beach. I'm just saying that in many incidents, a lot of times the teachers, which in doing these kind of investigations, when they lose their license, they don't want to make a big deal about it. They want to just move it so it's not something that they have to deal with when it's inappropriate. So that's something that's been interesting. Just, when people are able to retire, when there's been multiple times when they were like told to knock it off, stop saying and doing weird stuff,
Were the parents made aware in these situations? Like if their kids were at the receiving end of his alleged behavior, or did it kind of vary?
So in the documents, it doesn't normally list the victims' names. So I don't know. Like in the 17-year-old that I interviewed who got who was the one that was the picture, the final straw, his mother was notified eventually when things like came to light. He didn't go home and tell his mom. It took like, when that teacher overheard it a few months or weeks later, she was like, whoa, this is weird. What do you mean you saw the teacher's genitals on the phone? And so then his mother was notified, and then that things unfolded. But I mean, that's also, the school district says that, parents were notified in various situations that we cover, but in these specific incidents, the way the language is written, I don't even know the names of some of these victims. It's not like I can call them and be like, hey, what happened? Did you know? So who's making the decision as to what information is being released and what information is being kept? That's, the whole thing of a lot of this. It's like, who's in charge of making these decisions as to what is being allowed and what is not being allowed? The mother of the 17-year-old who I also interviewed her, and she was very annoyed about the way the whole thing was handled. And she said her daughter took gym class with Molineaux during COVID, and that she was concerned because like the kids were doing videos, like they were home and they were doing gym class on video, in the thing, and she thought it was weird.
Like on Zoom?
On Zoom, yeah. And during COVID, that's what a lot of the schools, they just were trying to deal with what they had to deal with. But she was flabbergasted at the thought that he's getting retirement money. She's like, I had no idea that he is getting money and getting $2,700 a month, according to the bond worksheet, after all of these times of being getting in trouble. Now, in a lot of the responses that we did see when he did get in trouble, he was saying it was an accident. He said, I didn't mean it. I didn't mean anything by it. This is being taken out of context. This was a joke. This wasn't something, so we saw some of his responses in those ways. Like, I think he was, in some of the responses, led you to believe that felt like he was being victimized by people reporting him or people getting him in trouble and things. But, I've requested to interview him in jail, and he's declined the interview. So I haven't talked to him directly, which I would love to hear what, he has to say about all of this.
Me too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have those extensive records from the Department of Education, but there is still a lot we don't know about Joseph Molineaux. His history, even before he entered Virginia Beach City Public Schools. And we'll touch more on that after this break. We're back with the conclusion of this episode on Joseph Molineaux. So, Margot, when you got those records back from the Department of Education, we learned a lot about his disciplinary history, but you still had a lot of questions about his retirement and more about his just employment history in general. What did you learn when school leaders got back to you?
Yeah, well, it was really frustrating because we were reaching out to them, and it was like they were giving very bare minimum answers or not responding, and they did eventually respond, but it took a little bit, and it was, difficult to, when we're just trying to get some of the basic information about where he worked, why he was allowed to get the retirement. But eventually they did provide some really interesting information, because I asked, why was he allowed to retire in lieu of dismissal when the genital picture allegations were made, and what they said to me is that an employee may sometimes opt to retire because some of these investigations take a really long time. It takes an extensive period of time. And so instead of going through all that, they can just retire, in lieu of, dealing with all of that. And they also said that they cannot stop an employee from filing for retirement benefits with the state. Now, unless there's like a felony charge, which is, a different type of situation. But basically, the Virginia retirement system is different than the school district. So it's not like they, control what's going on over here. Now they, it's all part of, can be connected in certain ways. However, they can't stop somebody from getting retirement if there is no, felony. That's not how it works.
Okay, and then just to clarify, those incidents that school leaders had documented involving like him and students and staff, none of those involved actual criminal charges, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
No criminal charge. There were no criminal charges with any of the allegations that were made in the school district. There was like an allegation with the substitute teacher where they described the behavior as harassment. And there was another one where it could be a criminal charge with the threats to the paper. However, there were no charges. There, he did not face any charges, except we do know that he pleaded guilty to a DUI charge in '87 in York County. So that was before he got hired in Virginia Beach. And, despite that DUI charge, he was still allowed to be hired. It's not a felony charge. So, he was hired to work despite having that on his record.
And so then from about 99 to up until his retirement in 2023, he didn't just work at Kempsville where he retired, right? Like he had made the rounds at several schools within the district.
Yeah, he worked at 6 different schools just in the city of Virginia Beach. That's during his career with that city. We know he worked at Salem, he worked at Princess Anne Middle, Lansdowne High, Green Run, Cox, and then Kempsville. And so he was moved around a lot of different schools during the duration of that entire career, over 20 years. He worked as a health teacher, he worked as a PE teacher, and a gym teacher, obviously, and he also worked as a coach at certain times in the career, which was when that situation with the paper happened. He was the assistant football coach for Lansdowne when that happened. But yeah, he's had exposure to like a lot of kids. People know him. Anyone that's been in the Virginia Beach school districts, many people that have gone through or grew up and, that time period are very familiar with him if they were at the school where he was working.
Mm-hmm. And I thought it was interesting when we were posting about this case on our social media, kids were commenting, like tagging their friends, "Oh my gosh, look, it's Coach Mo."
Yeah, and a lot of those comments were negative. A lot of them saying they felt like there was something weird going on. Some saying they were he was their favorite teacher. There was a few that really liked him, and then other ones that thought he was very odd. A lot of negativity associated with it, and just a lot of commenting on social media from people that knew him when he was a teacher, if they were students or whatever.
Okay, so that was a lot, but what is next for him? Because I know you've been following this closely.
Yeah, so he has court in August and September. He's facing those charges in Virginia Beach related to going to the high school, and the child pornography charges. So he's going to have to face the judge. He's currently being held in the Virginia Beach jail for all of this. He was not issued a bond and is being held in there. We also know that he has to go to Yorktown because some of the threats on the phone were from there. So he's going to have to deal with the charges from Yorktown as well. So multi, jurisdictions with some of the stuff that's going on.
I know you'll be in court for those, right?
Yes, or someone from WTKR will be, yes.
All right. Well, thank you so much for breaking that down. That makes a lot more sense now. Very interesting case.
Yeah. And we'll have more coming out on when teachers lose their licenses. This has kind of opened up the door for us to ask a lot more questions about, why certain things are the way they are, or when they get in trouble, why can't we get more information? Recently, I got a teacher that got in trouble and for abuse, and it's all redacted. I'm like, why is this? It's pages and pages of redaction, but they lost their license for abuse of a child. So we're trying to dig into what's going on and why, we want information, and the public wants to know when things like this are happening. People want to know. They want to be in the know if there are, allegations or problematic behavior that's going on.
Oh, absolutely. And if it involves people in charge of supervising your children,
some of the most vulnerable in our community that need to be protected.
Well, thank you so much for your work on that.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next time.